Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Upland Social, brought to you by Gundog Central and Ballad of the Bird Dog.
Hey, Rooster. Good girl. Good girl. Nice shot! Fetch it up, Willow! Call Willow! Right there, right there! Woohoo!
Today's guest is Rob Curtis, an upland bird hunter hailing from the Prairie State of Illinois, and is no stranger to the open road and adventure. Inspired by hunting literature, Rob sets out to create his own stories. From the prairies of the West to the quail woods of the Southeast, Rob has traversed 17 states in search of the next flush and has successfully harvested 16 of the 25 species in the North American upland bird slam. Today, we talk upland road trips, books, why more hunters need to travel, why, in his opinion, bird hunting is the best type of hunting, his recent camping outfit project, and much more, all alongside his Drahthaar, Jake. Hey, Rob, thanks for joining us today on the Upland Social. Really appreciate it, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ron. I really appreciate it. I'm not sure who that guy is, but he sounds very interesting. I'd like to hear from him.
He's
Great bio. Great bio.
He sounds
Thank
really
you.
cool, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, yeah, I know that I gave a brief overview of yourself there, to folks. But yeah, anything else that you want to tell the listeners before we hop in today about Rob Curtis?
I think I have to first mention that my wife and children are saints, and they fully support me in my endeavors. And that the only thing they say is that I must bring the dog home, Jake, alive, or I might as well stay out there wherever I'm.
Yeah, that's the only that's the requirement
It's
to
really
get
their
back
only
home,
request.
right?
They support me 100%. Yeah, support me 100%.
Good. Well, if I know that you said that you listened to the episode a few times or a few episodes of mine, and I appreciate that. And any of the listeners, if they listen for some time, they'll know that I kind of like to take a person's life, and their profile kind of in chapters. And so before we get into the bulk of the conversation today, because we're definitely going to talk about your travels and your camping and, trying to do things on a budget. And I think all that stuff is really interesting. I want to talk about how you got into hunting as a child, and then you kind of went away from it to do different types of sports, and then you picked it back up as an adult. So tell us all about that, what your first introductions to hunting were, and then what was that thing that got you back in, to hunting as an adult as well?
So I did a little bit of hunting as a kid, a little pheasant hunting, a little quail hunting, a little deer, a little squirrel, mostly fishing. My dad and I did a ton of fishing. The hunting was kind of declining at that time compared to what I think, had experienced. So he's shifted more to the fishing and away from the hunting. So I did a little bit. At the same time, a lot of my desire for hunting was from reading Western history about the mountain men, Jim Bridger and Jedediah Smith and Hugh Glass and the Native Americans. So a lot of my desire was fueled through that. Unfortunately for hunting, I began playing football at about the same time, and they coincide. And
Mm-hmm.
football won out, and I ended up playing in high school and college. And but it was always there in the back of my mind that I wanted to be in the wild, in nature, out there, wherever that mystical place is out there. That's where I wanted to be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so when I got done with college, my cousin's husband was into canoeing, and we started canoeing together and whitewater kayaking. At the time, and I still am, I live in Chicagoland, so I really didn't know that there was any hunting really available, around here. So I
Hmm.
shifted more to we were whitewater kayaking, we were snowboarding, skiing. I got into some scuba. I hiked part of the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu in Peru. Um, I would go to some other countries, rent dirt bikes and ride dirt bikes and stuff like that. So I was doing adventurous outdoor stuff. Then we started having kids, and I thought, okay, I have to find something a little closer to home. And my brother-in-law he's a very accomplished archery deer hunter, and he was doing some archery deer. So I looked into that. And in the state of Illinois, that really is the thing that they focus on. Like, for example,
Right.
at many of the public lands here in Illinois, the squirrel season is only open after Labor Day to September 30th, which I find just crazy because what is the best way to get a kid into hunting? The easy barrier of entry with squirrel hunting, very simple, um, and
Right.
exciting and thrilling. But that's Illinois, as you know, probably something similar going on in Indiana, especially in the more urban areas. So I looked around, I saw that, okay, the archery deer hunting is the season that's open the most with the most access. So I started getting into that a little bit. And then that just wasn't my thing. The sitting in the stand, the very sedentary nature of it, it just wasn't. And there was a lot of guys out there, and I try to avoid other people as much as possible in my hunting. I try to just stay clear of that. I try to go to the places where no one else is going.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of how it evolved to. And then I adopted a Weimaraner for some people that couldn't feed him anymore, and he was all I had to give him the gas. I had to draw that hunt that he had deep inside his instincts out of him, and he became a wonderful hunting dog over the years that I had him. And miss him dearly. He was a wonderful dog, Fritz. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got back into it. Just started in Illinois, started looking around, seeing what public land was available, doing the research. I had a good buddy Alan and my buddy Kurt with a K who got me into some duck hunting. So yeah, I had some good mentors, and then you just have to stoke the fire, and I stoked that with literature, with reading, hunting literature, books, magazines, the internet. Just that there's so much out there to get you fired up about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So did you start hunting with that Weimaraner then?
I did. I did. I began here in Illinois that we have a put and take at the state places. That's where I started. Um, and then I started doing a little woodcock hunting. There's some places here that have the woodcock stop on the migration from Ontario down to Louisiana. Um, so I did a little bit of woodcock hunting, and then shortly after that, I made my first out of state trip um, to Wisconsin shortly after.
Okay. Cool. Cool. So so when you picked it back up, you're hunting with this Weimaraner.
Yes,
Um, when did it like click for you that okay, I'm a bird hunter, because if anybody
yes,
looks on your
yes,
page and then you even said to me like in your notes beforehand that in your opinion the best type of hunting, and I would
yes,
tend to agree too, that the best type of hunting
yes,
is the small game upland hunting.
yes.
So yeah, when did that click for you? That like okay, this is
I
this
was
is me.
sitting
This is
one
I'm a bird hunter.
time. I had shot a couple I was at Iroquois Wildlife Area. And I'm going to do my best to not list too many places just because I want to take away anybody's, honey hole.
Yeah,
But I was at
but yeah,
Iroquois
yeah.
Wildlife, which is not far from the Indiana border. I'm not sure where are you from in Indiana, Ryan?
I'm way down south. I'm 5 minutes
Okay.
from Kentucky.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. I have a good hunting
So
buddy
yeah,
that
quite opposite.
grew up in that part of the country, and it's very southern down there. It's very different than northern Indiana, I
But
believe.
yeah.
Um, so I was there. It was a beautiful, crisp fall day. I had shot a couple woodcock over points, wonderful with trees, and I was sitting in this sort of sun-filled little glade and the leaves were just trickling down, the fall leaves, and I just thought, man, this is it. this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm about. I'm like, I felt momentarily like Daniel Boone, Jim Bridger, and Davy Crockett all rolled into one. And
Yeah.
that was when it was like, okay, this is the type of hunting I will be doing going forward.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome, man. Yeah, and that's one of my first upland bird I ever shot was without a dog, actually. It was
Okay.
a bobwhite quail just right across the road from my grandparents' house, and I thought that was really cool. It wasn't like I'm a bird hunter now. I was still like really jacked up about it and fascinated by it. But yeah, but the woodcock, man, it's definitely a special bird for me too, because that was the first bird that my dog ever pointed, was a
Oh yeah.
woodcock. And
And they're
yeah,
great for a
so
pointing.
just
They're great for a pointing dog because they hold so well. And I think I mentioned this in some of our correspondence. A woodcock is one of those birds. I used to run into these gentlemen up in Wisconsin that came from North Carolina, and they saw us cooking up the woodcock, and I mean, we might as well be been eating dog turds in their mind. Like they just felt like that was the most bizarre thing that someone could ever do was to eat a
mhm,
woodcock. Um, and I said, man, these things are delicious. So for me, and this is something I think I alluded to as well. Um, I like to shoot a bird and then immediately take a knee and pluck it. It's warm.
yeah,
The bird is warm, and some birds, like a dove or a woodcock, pluck very easily when they're warm. Takes a couple minutes, not a
mhm,
full pluck, a rough pluck. You know what I mean? It begins the process of cooling the bird down. And what I think you do is you take what becomes a chore a couple hours later back at the truck when you're tired and you have other things you have to consider, the dog and gear and all that kind of stuff. It turns that chore into a
mhm,
moment of grace where you can just sort of sit there and reflect a
yeah,
little bit and let the dog take a rest, let the uplands quiet down a little bit. You pluck your bird and then you're off after another. So that's what I try to
yeah,
do generally as often as I can with it. Now, if I'm gonna covey a quail, out in Kansas and I shoot one and then I see them land 100 yards away, then I'm probably hustling over there. But in most instances, I like to take the
mhm,
time to pluck that bird right there. You know, Jim Harrison would
yeah,
say,
yeah.
I don't
So
know
do
if
you
you are
carry
you
like a
familiar with. Go ahead, go ahead.
I was
So
just gonna say,
are
so
you
do you
familiar?
carry like a Ziploc bag and then yeah, go ahead.
I do not. I just find that they're just fine in my game bag. I have a Final Rise vest, and I just toss them back there as is. And if they get a little twigs on them,
Okay,
I just brush them off and go. I mean, most people would consider me a bit of a
okay.
savage, so you know, um, a little dirt and twigs doesn't bother me at all. And I always eat
Yeah,
the heart
okay,
and liver. Always eat the heart and liver. Um, to me,
okay,
that's
yep,
just some of the most nutritious part of it. And we've eaten even my buddy Kurt with a K, we've even taken the trail, the intestines, and cooked it and then spread it on toast. And then I have a new buddy
mhm,
that's French, Jerome. He's got a couple of beautiful Gordon setters. He took and cut the top of the head off and scooped out the brains, which is a common thing to do in France. So really utilizing the whole
okay,
animal.
yeah,
Are you
yeah,
familiar with Jim
wow.
Harrison? That's a little too
Yes, I'm
far for a
familiar
lot
with
of
them,
people. Yeah.
yes.
So he has a quote. He has a lot of good. He has a quote that says, to not pluck your bird is a sin against God and nature. Like that is where like the French in the wine, they talk about like the terroir, I believe is how you pronounce it. Like you can taste the soil, the where it came from in the wine. And I think the same is true in the birds, and that flavor resides in the skin. And so I like to try to save that
Mhm.
whenever possible. Not to say I've never breasted a bird. I'm not saying that, but I try not to. I try.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's definitely something to be said for, like, utilizing the as much of the animal that you can, and to, not let it go to waste and to be respectful of that game. I mean, as much as time, effort, energy that you put into it, to to harvest that bird, at least save the legs, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And you can make some pretty fantastic dishes out of the leg meat. And for me personally, and I think this is no secret to a lot of people, but some of the best wild game that I think that you're going to eat out there is the legs off of a woodcock. Now, granted, it's like a bite per leg basically, but
To
it's
me,
fantastic little
that
cuts of meat.
is the yes, that is 100% the most incredible part of the woodcock is that the two thighs without a doubt that because they're white and the breast is
Hmm.
red, you know. So what my buddy, my French
Yeah.
buddy, he's trained as a baker, but I think he also has some, he's been to culinary school, and I would always spatchcock up the back and then split it. So when we were
Hmm.
in Wisconsin, he said, "No, what, try it up the breast." And it will cook the breast better than if you go up the backbone. And I find that to be the case. So almost all small birds, I split them up the breast and then crack them open and flatten them out and sort of cook them like a steak. And it gets a lot more contact with the pan, I find, because I generally
Hmm.
saute in butter and just salt. I try not to get too fancy. Um, Even though I don't know, are you familiar with Hank Shaw?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, he has wonderful, very elaborate recipes that I whenever we have wild game parties, we generally will do the more elaborate stuff. But in the field, I like to spatchcock it up the chest, crack it open in the pan, butter and salt, and that's it. And try to really get a sense of maybe what the bird has been eating and where it's been living and that sort of thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Very cool. No, I appreciate you expound upon all those details. I think that's really neat. Yeah, man. So let's shift gears here a little bit.
Okay, sure, sure.
And just like we talked about in the intro there about you taking all these trips, and one of the things that yeah, it's you pull up your profile on Instagram, or if anybody that knows you, it's very clear that you have a very adventurous spirit, and that you love to travel and hunt these new places and these new species and see these new uh, places of scenery. Yeah, man. So take us to like your very first out of state trip. Did you say that was Wisconsin?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So again, this comes from Harrison. Him and his buddies, he had a cabin. He lived in the lower peninsula of Michigan, and then he had a cabin in the upper peninsula. And he would have his literary buddies come, and they would go, hunt grouse and woodcock, and then cook. And he has a great essay, Bird Hunting. It's in the book Just Before Dark, the anthology Just Before Dark, and that's where kind of okay, I thought to myself, okay, this is close by. And I originally started, I contacted a woman up there, Northwind Enterprises, and she did at the time you could buy like a plat book from her that showed she was a forester and she would show all the cuts. And I believe she still does that. Um, and that's where I started. But then now I think the state of Wisconsin, they have it. You can download it and they put it on X is what I use now for all my hunting now, which is I'm not affiliated anyway, but it's been a real game changer for me having that ability to see the public land in real time and where I'm standing at. So I went to Wisconsin the first trip, and this is where later on maybe we'll talk about my truck camper a little bit. But so I had an incredible experience out there that made me realize really what I was looking for. So I was staying in town and commuting out from like a motel in town. And one evening I was driving down a two track, um, and I was just gonna kind of scout the two track dead ended from what I could see on my map at a pond, and I was just gonna scout this pond for ducks. So as I'm driving in, there's a grouse on the road, and then it goes into the brush. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, good spot, grouse. And then as I get to the dead end, it was about 2 miles off the main sand road. I see a woodcock circling the meadow at sunset, and it drops into the ditch nearby. And I'm like, okay, we're two for two here. We got grouse, we got woodcock. So I get out and I have my binoculars and I'm looking at the far end of the pond. It was maybe about 4 or 5 acres. and I see a small raft of wood ducks moving into the cattails. And I thought, okay, we're 3 for 3. And I'm coming back here, obviously. And as I was standing there, Fritz had jumped out of the truck, and I see all the hair on his back. Like, you know how the Ridgebacks have that stripe along their backs? Um, all
Mm,
the hair on his back stands up, and a deep growl comes from his chest. And as that comes, I start
mhm,
hearing some wolves howling. And they are, I mean, they're right there. There was the pond was a little dam. There was a meadow, and then there was the pond was dammed up, and then there was a tag alder swamp at the outlet, and they were not more than 50 yards away. I mean, the hairs on the back
wow.
of my neck went up, and we listened. They went on for a minute or so, and then I got in the truck, and I was sitting there, sort of processing this experience, and I thought to myself, "This is where I want to be. I don't want to be in town.
Mhm,
I want to be right here every night, every day. I don't want to commute back and forth. I want to be out here soaking up this wildness and this wilderness and this nature." And then the next year, my buddy and I, Kurt with a K, we came back and we set up a tent, and we had a wonderful hunt, grouse, woodcock, just I love northern Wisconsin. It's a great. There's so much public land up there. It's beyond belief.
yeah.
So yeah.
I love that. I went to Wisconsin, my wife and I did this last fall and did a week of grouse and woodcock hunting up there,
Yes.
and you're right. I mean, it's unreal how much public land, compared to Illinois, compared to Indiana, that you
Yes. Yes.
can, basically point the vehicle in any direction and you can go find some birds.
And it's very
Really cool
welcoming.
instance that I had one night. Really cool instance that I had one night where I was cleaning birds or cleaning my gun or something like that out on the tailgate, and just got dark, and I was sitting there, and then all of a sudden I hear what I think had to be a pack of wolves fire up in the distance, because it
Sure, sure.
was, what coyote. I mean, a lot of people, what
Yes.
coyotes sound like. They're
It's more
very
of a
kind of
yip.
yippy and yappy.
Yes,
Yes,
yes, yes,
and this
yes,
was more of like a moan almost. It was just like this deep, like woo, like I had never heard
yes.
anything like it, and I was like, that has to be that. So it was pretty cool to hear that. I mean, it kind of weirds you out a little bit, but at the same time, I was like, man, this is awesome. And so,
Well, that's one of the things
yeah,
that is so incredible to me about hunting is that so much of what we're doing, what people are doing, young men, young women, is they're watching. They're not participating. There's so much. We're so surrounded with entertainment, and again, I'm not judging. I do it all the time too with the internet, my phone. But to me, hunting can take the most mundane woodlot and turn it into a place of the most incredible adventure that you've ever experienced. You know what I mean? Um, and
hmm,
those experiences that draw you back to the wild, where those wolves, they and you and us as a hunter, we are participating on the same level as they are in the circle of life. We're not just watching. We're just not hiking or bird watching. Not that there's anything wrong with those things, but we are in the game, and that is what makes it, to me, hunting the most fabulous sport, hobby, whatever you want to call it, that there is, without because you are participating in the game of life in the circle.
This episode is brought to you by Gundog Central. If you're looking for your next bird dog, field trial prospect, or even hunting hound, Gundog Central is your one-stop shop. They've made it simple to browse a wide range of hunting dogs for sale, all in one place. Whether you're an upland hunter chasing roosters or quail, a waterfowl enthusiast living for cold mornings in the marsh, or someone competing in field trials, Gundog Central connects you with the right dog for your pursuit. One feature I think is really cool is the interactive map Gundog has. Just click on a state and find a breeder. It's that simple. They're dedicated to making this the best site to find your next hunting dog. And if you're a dog trader or own a kennel, listing your hunting dog for sale is easy and completely free. Start your search or post your next prospect today at gundogcentral.com. This episode is brought to you by Ballad of the Bird Dog. providing modern, design-forward shopping right in the heart of Brenham, Texas. Skeet, founder and owner Jared Anderson's legendary bird dog, showed us what hunting companions have shown their handlers for generations. That instinct, loyalty, and honest hard work create moments that last forever. And that same philosophy is stitched into everything they do. Ballad of the Bird Dog is built on tradition and heritage, inspiring well-built, essential goods designed to last. It's about simplicity, dependability, products you can trust from people that just get the bird dog lifestyle. If you believe in quality over flash, heritage over hype, and in goods that work as hard as you do, you'll feel right at home. Visit balladofthebirddog.com or its beautiful brick and mortar shop in Brenham, Texas, and experience the story for yourself. Yeah, yeah. No, there's like an intimacy, to it that
Yes.
I think a lot of
Incredible
other
word.
things that are in the outdoor space have a hard time achieving. And maybe somebody would argue with me on that, but there is, it's, I love how, there's a fellow that I had on several weeks ago. His name's Keith Crowley, and he's a writer, lives in Wisconsin actually. And he said, these are blood sports, these aren't sterile, ways of interacting with nature, but it is like a very visceral way of interacting with nature. And man, I just love
100%.
that because it's so
I would
true.
totally
So
agree
true
with
that
him.
there's an intimacy that it's that in it's not just adjacency to nature. I mean, you're in it just like you're saying. And
You're
so
in
I
it, man.
appreciate
You're
you
participating, you
phrasing
know?
it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on that same note, with these trips, you've obviously, man, you've hunted 17 states. That's incredible. I mean, just amazing. And what's been
Thank you.
some of your favorite trips? Tell us about some experiences, man. What you've done and some species that you've hunted. What's been some of your favorite memories and why?
So I just did a Nevada, Utah, Colorado last September, and I was going for Himalayan snowcock and white-tailed ptarmigan. I unfortunately did not harvest. I failed, but just to get out there and generally I'm hunting from the truck and I'm out there for a few hours. But when I went for ptarmigan and snowcock, I put the backpack on. I hiked up into 11, 12,000 feet. I spent several nights up there, just with my gear and my dog. And that takes the seriousness of it to a whole new level. Um, I got into such rugged country I got within 100 yards of the snowcock. And I just where they were at, I could not put a stock on. It's a shotgun hunt. I just could not get any closer to them from where I was at with, and I did try, and I spooked them up into the cliffs. Amazing thing about snowcock, they sound like rutting elk in September. The call they make, it's very similar, and I had a plan to try to get to this sort of grassy area at the base of this cliff at 11,000 feet, and it was so rugged. I planned to be there a half hour before sunrise, but it was so rugged. I just didn't feel comfortable walking off trail in the dark. So I waited a little bit longer, and I ended up they did fly down just where I thought they were going to, but I was about 25 minutes too late. Um, so I tried to put a smock on them. They got a sense that I was there, and they faded into the cliffs and began calling. And it was like the guy Odysseus with the sirens. Like they called me up into the cliffs, and I scaled up another 1,000 feet, just scrambling. Me and Jake on the rocks, and we got to the top. We didn't get them. Going up was no problem. Coming down was hairy, and
Hmm.
I'm not going to say I had a panic attack because I don't panic. But I did have to sit down and give myself a very stern talking to and just be like,
Yeah.
okay, man, you're going to get out of here the same way you got in, one step at a time. Don't be in a rush. Just take your time and you'll be fine. And we were. But I'm not. Maybe gonna go back next year. I'm doing different trips this fall with some buddies. But it's definitely that's gonna probably be the toughest one to get is the snowcock and that's in Nevada up in the Ruby Mountains.
Hmm.
So that's probably gonna be the toughest one. But I think I'll circle back to that before I get too old. That was incredible. Montana, I love Montana. I did 4 seasons there, 4 seasons. Um, Now here's an interesting thing to chat about a little bit. I'm curious what your thoughts on this will be. So I did 4 seasons, always September 1st to like the 14th or so. And generally I would hunt 10, 11, 12 days out of those 14. And how many hunters, I would start in the southeast corner, and then I was always generally end up in the northeast corner, just working my way slowly. Um, how many hunters do you think that I saw in the field in those 40 plus days in the field
In Montana?
in Montana?
And what were the dates?
The first 2 weeks of the September 1st to the 14th, the first 2 weeks of the grouse sharp, the prairie grouse season out there, partridge, sage grouse, sharp tail.
Yeah. Man, that's a great question. I'm gonna guess, and I may be way off on this, but 75.
Zero,
0.
none, zero, not a single one. And this theme has played out. So there seems to be, this is one of the things where this topic may fire some people up, and that's not my intention really, but I think it's worthwhile to discuss. There is this very pervasive mindset in the community that there is no more access and there's too many hunters. And sometimes you get a lot of agencies asking for money, saying, "Hey, if you give us more money, we'll give you more access." Well, I have not experienced that in my travels. I have not experienced this overcrowding. And so I'll ask you a second question. How many trucks do you think I saw parked at parking lots where I wanted to go hunt in those 40 plus days?
Well, based off your previous answer, I would say 0.
One. I saw one. And that was a guy from
Okay.
Georgia.
Okay.
And he was already out there hunting. So I had I always try, when I'm doing public land, I have a plan A and a plan B. So if someone's at it, because I never will park and hunt in the same parking lot that somebody else is. I've had guys come and hunt right on top of me in certain places. And you're like, I just always, if there's somebody in that parking lot, I go someplace else. Because I don't want to be on top of anybody. If someone's hunting a piece of public land and I know it and I can see them, I just move on up the road to someplace else. Um,
Mhm.
it's a dangerous sport, and you don't want to have someone shooting at a bird and then there's your dog or something like that. So so going back to, so where am I going to go in September for my prairie grouse hunt with my buddies? Is it going to be Montana or North Dakota?
I would think Montana.
But it's not going to be Montana because I looked at the regs. So we were all set to go to Montana September 1st. And, I looked at I like to make sure I do my due diligence and really know the laws of every state that I hunt. So I'm looking for, some states you can hunt a half hour before sunrise. Some states it's a half hour, like Montana is both a half hour before and a half hour after sunset, if I remember correctly. North Dakota is just a half hour before sunrise, ends at sunset. So I always try to research the laws as far as transporting your firearm, like, for example, here's a great tip for folks. The West is full of state trust land,
Mhm.
but each state treats it differently. For example, in Montana, you can hunt and camp on state trust land. But in North Dakota, you can only hunt it. New Mexico, you can only hunt it. So they each have their like I was just in Wyoming, you can hunt on state trust land. You cannot camp on state trust land. So a lot of states have different so I always try to peruse the regulations where I'm going anywhere and get a real good
Mhm.
sense of it. So I just happened to do that. We were texting back and forth with my hunting buddies and talking about Montana. And I said, hey, I was looking at the regulations just to give them a heads up of, firearm transportation and stuff like that. And I saw that they just changed the law starting this year where non-residents are not allowed to hunt the first 10 days of the season on any public land. Were you familiar with that?
Yes, I've heard something about this, yes.
I was not on my radar because I don't really get on the forums too much complaint. And but I did get on the forums, some of the popular chat places that people go to, hunters, and I just was trying to get a sense of why they would do this because my experience is I'm not seeing non-resident hunter. I'm not seeing any hunters out there in a place like Montana. I'm not saying they're not out there. I'm just saying I haven't seen them, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and I came across a story about a guy somewhat famous in the, I don't know if famous is the right word, but I think he's well known in the bird hunting community. And a few years ago, he has a break of RV and he's got a big dog bite. He has 10 dogs and they busted him with 29 birds in his freezer of his RV. And now I don't know the guy. I don't really know his side of the story, anybody. So I'm not saying that those were all his birds or whatever. That's well over the legal limit. But what I try to do in response to that is that if I do great in an area, I leave. If I do poorly in an area, I leave. I just almost never camp in the same place. I can't even think of a time when I camped in the same place, except in Wisconsin. But all my Western trips, I move camp every night. And it may be only be a half hour or 45 minutes, but I'm never hunting the same. I don't ever hunt the same piece of ground over and over again. Because you can imagine as a local, you see this guy with 10 dogs and that's just going to set people off. So I think we have to take an attitude of, hey, move lightly, move really taking care of the resource. Um,
Mhm.
just seeing somebody with 10 dogs on the ground would probably make me go, what's this guy doing? This seems excessive,
Mhm.
And I think that was what the backlash was about, that there was these people in the northeast part of Montana that were setting up shop out there for a couple months and really hitting the low public land hard. And now
Mhm.
we can't hunt the first 10 days of the season out there. So I
Yeah.
wanted to hit a new state, so we're gonna do North Dakota in September.
Yeah.
I'm excited about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I've not read up on it too much. Like I said, I just kind of heard about it, and I've not hunted Montana for 5 years now, something like that.
Okay.
I do
Okay.
know that the early prairie grouse trip that has become like kind of like a staple for a lot of people in the last 5 to 10 years. It's really, I think that and then late season desert quail have really
Sure.
risen in popularity over the last five to
Because
ten
in
years.
Oklahoma, residents cannot hunt the last 2 weeks. Non-residents can't hunt the last 2 weeks of the season.
Hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
I did New
So,
Mexico. I did New Mexico in January for quail.
mhm.
How many hunters do you think I saw?
Oh, I bet five or less.
Zero. Zero.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
I did do Kansas last year, and I never saw anybody in the field, but I saw trucks, and there was guys that were I was at a spot, and he pulled up, and I had seen him earlier, and we had chatted a little bit, and he was going to hunt the spot I was in, and he went about he went about a quarter mile away. I felt he should have went
Hmm.
a mile. I would have driven a mile away, but he was only about a quarter mile away, which was a little too close in my opinion. And I think it comes from,
Hmm.
I know one of your questions that we were kind of going back and forth was you were asking about what, the changes in hunting in Illinois and what did it used to be better. And I think these folks, it did used to be great and it was fairly simple and now it's not. And they're unhappy about it. And they make statements to me like, I've been hunting this river for 20 years. So they just think, hey, I've been hunting this spot. This is my spot, even if you're already there, and they're like, well, I'm going to
Hmm.
set up 100 yards from you and I'm going to blast everything that comes near you. And you're just like, or you could just hunt with me, like we could just
Hmm.
maybe become friends, perhaps. But that rarely happens. So I think it was easy at one time, and maybe it's not anymore. My thing is, I tell all the young hunters that I interact with, I have a good friend. that I hunt with. Grant, he's a fireman. He's about 22 years old, becoming a fireman. Tough kid, runs the river like a pro. Um, I said, listen, man, this river, it will be gone. You know, are you familiar with Ernest Hemingway? I'm sure, right? So he wrote, he grew up in Oak Park and he wrote a great essay called Remembering Shooting Flying. And he was in, I would say, he was living in Havana, Cuba at the time, was probably in the late 30s, early 40s, 1940s. And he was talking about hunting as a kid. So he grew up in Oak Park, right next to Chicago, and he was talking about the first place that he shot a pheasant was west of the Des Plaines River, around North Avenue. And he said, I returned back home, and there's a hot dog stand now where I shot my first pheasant. And we're talking
Yeah.
about this is 1940, 1920, 1930, you know what I mean? And those are the dates that he's talking about. And you realize that this has been something that's been happening. And he basically said that all hunters need to metaphorically go west, you know, to
Hmm.
go west and find new hunting grounds. So this is going to be something that's going to happen continually. And I tell all my buddies, hey, you got to get on some of these trips, man. It's way better out there. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting how, because Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and there was obviously a time, I shouldn't say obviously, but there was a
No,
time
very
where
obviously, yeah.
the 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 hunting was just off the charts. And I think that if I had what what the landscape was like, let's say like in the 1960s, 1950s, where we had a ton of pheasants, we had a ton of quail. I don't know if you guys had rough grouse in Southern Illinois, but we had rough grouse right here in my backyard. Woodcock, that resident woodcock, migrating woodcock, unreal waterfowl hunting, like on the Kankakee River, and the Kankakee Marsh just as a whole, that basically ran all the way through northern Indiana over into Illinois a little bit. If that was my landscape that I had to hunt with, and we had prairie chickens, I forgot about that. Uh,
Really, I didn't
I,
know
I, I
that,
don't.
Indiana.
Yep, yep, yep. Up in northern Indiana, we had prairie chickens, and the last documented bird was 1964 or three, something like that.
There's a
But
population that they've reintroduced down in southeast Illinois. But what stinks about it is that you can't do any other hunting there.
mm,
Like you can't hunt
yeah,
for, there's quail there. I'm sure of it because I've shot quail not far from these pieces of public land, but you're not allowed to hunt on these lands because someone might shoot a prairie chicken, which is
yeah,
that's pretty standard for Illinois. You know what I mean? That kind of
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, but so now especially in a day and age where travel is so accessible for many people and
Yes,
information is so available for so many people, we are we are inundated with um all this information of what is available in the West, which I'm super, super thankful for. And I really cherish like the trips that I've been fortunate to take to Montana and Kansas. And I plan to
oh yeah.
extend that further west into, the desert and to the Pacific Northwest
Hey,
and stuff like that.
let's go, man.
But
You and I, let's go.
yeah, yeah, don't tempt me with a good time, right?
Yes,
but
yes,
but like it's I think a lot of this is symptomatic of the fact that we do not in the East, we don't have consistent quality upland hunting to be just had right around the corner and in our backyard. Is so we have to, if we're going to get these dogs that we want to have wild birds in front of them, we have to go where wild birds are. Um, but the tension that needs to be straddled with that, I think, and it sounds like, or I would think that you would agree on this too, is that obviously not every single person, all 640 million people in the US or however much it is, the wildlife populations could not sustain everybody hunting. And so
definitely.
so if it means that Montana blocks off those first 10 days so that non-residents can't hunt it, like I said, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, and I'd like to hear both sides of the story before I maybe draw
Sure,
my
definitely,
conclusion.
yeah.
But I'm gonna draw it just a little prematurely here. Is that
No
maybe
problem.
that's not a bad thing because so many people now, like I said, once again, they're making these annual trips where they're building these prairie grass trips into their hunting season, where maybe 10 years ago they would have never thought of doing such a thing. And
Sure,
so I
sure,
think
sure.
always being mindful of what do the birds need? What does the landscape need? How how can I leave, less of a mark on this place, or just, as little of a footprint as I can? Am I contributing to the decline of the species in this area? And if that's the case, it's like, man, we need to pull the plug and get a different plan. And so maybe that means blocking off the first 10 days. I don't know. But yeah, it's always being mindful of that. And I think that as bird hunters, I think many of us, we kind of have, I think conservation is just kind of baked into the mindset that we, have, as a whole. Not to say that other subtypes of hunting don't have it, but I feel like it's pretty. If you follow along with like pheasants forever, quail forever, RGS, I mean, conservation is just, it's almost like synonymous with like just the pursuit of the bird itself. Um, and so yeah, it's always asking that question and not asking like what do I get out of this, but what does the animal and what
Sometimes
does
that's
the place get out of it?
sometimes that's at odds with the environmentalists. Um, what what would you say is the most beneficial tree to a ruffed grouse?
Well, I'm no biologist, I'm no scientist, and I almost feel like this is going to be the wrong answer, but I would say aspen just
It's a
because
bit of a
that's what
trick.
we
It's a bit
associate
of a
with
trick.
them. Yeah.
It's a bit of a trick question. It's a bit of a trick question. But go ahead. You said aspen.
Yeah, aspen.
Okay, so the most beneficial tree for a ruffed grouse is the one that is on the back of a logging truck.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of people see logging and they get upset. You know what I'm saying? So you were talking about the land and again, I'm not an expert on any of these things. I'm just a guy with some thoughts, and I'm 100%. I'm willing to be proved wrong. I'm not even saying I'm right. I'm just saying here's some ideas, here's some thoughts I have. So you're talking about the changing of the season, perhaps for the safeguarding of the land. If you've spent a lot of time out west, then you realize some of the worst things for the land are the cows. Now, again, I don't want to get the ranchers that are listening to this podcast upset at me, but there's a tremendous amount of overgrazing in the west, and you tend to see the private land looks really good a lot of times, and the public land looks pretty beat up. Um, So I was talking to a game biologist out in the Sandhills, and he was basically saying that the ranchers they have to give the ranchers a 5-year notice if they want to change the grazing plan um, on this particular piece of public ground I would hunt out there. And he said to me, he goes, "How much do you think that the ranchers pay to use this public land? How much do you think per cow per month?"
Man, I
Hmm.
I wouldn't even have the slightest of
I
what I
didn't
feel like
either.
is
I
a
didn't
good
either.
guess. So, yeah.
$2 a
Mm,
month per cow. $2 to go. Would you pay $2 to hunt that?
yeah.
Certainly we would. So, a lot of times, again, I remember my old boss was asking me about some various policies and rules at where I used to work, and how I thought the reps would respond to them. And I said, "Listen, man, you play your games and we play ours. So if Montana wants to change the season, well, I'll just go to North Dakota." And I'm not, maybe maybe you are correct that this was the right thing to do for Montana. Um, I'm a little more cynical when it comes to government and policies, but maybe it is the right thing. We'll see. I don't think people are going to
Hmm.
stop hunting prairie grouse in September.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think so either. And I'm not obviously saying we shouldn't. I mean, I've beginning to plan and strategize a potential prairie grouse trip I'm taking in September this year. I think
And for me,
that's a good
I
thing.
self-regulate when it comes to harvesting. Usually I'm on a solo trip. I don't run a cooler because it's too difficult to go back and forth to town for ice. I'm trying to disperse camp out on BLM land or national grasslands. Um, so I generally don't run a cooler. So I eat the birds. My dinner is the birds that I shoot that day. I used to try to
Mm,
bring birds home, and I sometimes the last day I'll try to bring a few birds home, um, to share with my buddies. But generally, I find that a lot of times they just sit in the freezer. And Jim Harrison would say, everybody come August 1st should look in their freezer, and whatever's left over from last hunting and fishing season, they subtract from the birds and fish that they are going to harvest this year.
hmm Yeah,
So,
yeah, I've
so
heard
yeah,
that
I
quote
try to
too.
self-regulate. I've shot a limit of sharp-tailed grouse, a few times, which is four, but that's a lot of birds for me and Jake to eat in one night. It's just too many. So, I
hmm
generally just shoot a couple birds, and that's it. And I'm perfectly happy with that. I'm perfectly happy with that. You
Yeah.
know. Um, so yeah, I think that
Well, yeah.
hunters
On that note,
generally. Yeah.
no, go ahead.
No, please, you go ahead.
I was just gonna shift gears, and you were talking about Jake,
Sure.
and so I was just gonna say,
Oh yeah.
tell us all about Jake, man.
So he's all gas. I have two daughters. One is sweet and a rule follower, and she much like my old dog Fritz. I put the shot collar on Fritz one time, and I hit the buzzer, and it was as if the hand of God struck him, and I never had to put on him ever again. Which is much like my oldest daughter. I spanked her one time, and she never required another one. Um, my youngest daughter is a bit of a wild child. She's wild, just like Jake. I could have spanked my youngest daughter every single day of her life. I'm not sure if it would have mattered. Jake is very well trained. I've worked with him constantly, but he's always testing. He's always testing. Do I have to do this? And then I go, yep, you do. And if you don't, you're going to get a little shock. And I probably unfortunately have to shock him every time I take him out because he just wants to keep going after whatever he's going after. But I probably haven't helped that a bit because I hunt squirrels and rabbits with them. So if something's running, he wants to go after it. So he's generally pretty steady on birds, but if it's a pheasant and he's that pheasant is running, he has a hard time. He wants to chase it. He wants to chase it. But a
hmm
great dog. Um, last 2 or 3 seasons ago, I was down in Florida hunting snipe, and he ran off a massive wild sow and her 8 or 9 piglets, and then
Oh
I would
man.
say like more like a sounder size. I think that's about a 1 year old. It was maybe about 30 pounds, and he ran the mother off, and as the sounders ran off, he grabbed one and killed it with about 3 or 4 shakes. So
Mm.
he is absolutely a beast. Um, and I did bring home and I did take the legs and the back straps and brought it out and cooked it up, and it was delicious. So unfortunately, he also likes to kill
Yeah.
raccoons,
Yeah.
which is kind of fun the first couple times to watch him fight a raccoon, and then you're kind of sick of it, and then because you got to figure out how to eat raccoon. Um, so I have he killed one. I brought it home for the boys, and I made it into a Julia Child. Julia Child has a recipe, beef bourguignon, and I served it up coon burgoon. I called it, and it was really good though. I'll be honest, it was very tasty. Really good meat, red meat, very tasty.
Okay.
So, um, yeah, but
Yeah.
he's a hard charger. He's a hard charger. I would
Yeah.
say anyone that's thinking about a draft should make sure they have the ability to train them because it is a daily endeavor to get them to do what you want. But they're wonderful hunting dogs. Wonderful
Yeah.
hunting dogs. Yeah. And a great. He's sitting. I don't know if you can see him. He's sitting right there on the chair. This whole time he's been sitting there on the
Okay.
chair. So he's a great house
Yeah.
dog too. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind
Yeah,
of
that's
dogs do you
definitely
have?
the impression that I get. That's definitely the impression that I get that they're, the hard charging, high octane, all gas, out in the field and yeah, is not afraid to pick a fight either
No,
with
no, no.
some animals out there.
Yeah, yeah. But they can do both. They can do the water. I mean, they're versatile. They can do the water. And the thing is, um, the Drahts are meant to be also, from my reading, they're a farm dog. They were developed in the late 19th century as a versatile catch-all dog for the new. There was kind of a new merchant class. Before that, a lot of the only people that could really hunt were the rich in Europe, and they had dogs for
Hmm.
everything. They had hounds for this and pointing dogs for this. Well, there was this burgeoning merchant class, and they needed a dog, but they couldn't afford to have a huge kennel, so they created the Drahthaar as sort of a waterfowl dog. They can blood track, they can point, and they also were a bit of a farm dog, protecting the property from what I think foxes are the most common vermin in Europe.
Okay. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, so they were just kind of like a Swiss
Yeah,
Army
yeah,
knife of a
good stuff.
dog.
Yeah, much very so, very so. It would be interesting to hunt behind some more. My buddy has a GSP who's very stylish, and like the English pointers and the setters. What kind of dogs do you have?
So I have one American Brittany. So that actually, if you can see
Okay.
behind me here, that's her in
Yeah,
between us right
yeah,
there. So
yeah,
that's me and
yeah.
my wife, and then our dog as well. And yeah, so her name's Creek. She is five and a half. And so yeah, man, love the Brittany. Actually, so this photo right here, and I know that if you're listening to the audio, you can't see this, but so this is a picture of
Sure,
me
totally.
about 10 years ago and meeting up with a friend in Iowa, and this is this dog. She's passed away at this point. Her name's Lady, and I just man when I hunted with her, I just fell in love with her, and so I knew that when I would get a bird dog, that it was going to be a Brittany, and so yep, so that's Creek Man, and we've hunted 10 states together so far. My
Oh,
plan is to
nice,
get to
nice.
around 15 or so, just like you. And
Sure.
yeah, and hopefully we'll get that, before she starts kind of slowing down a little bit, So
Yeah. Well, that's
yeah,
where the
we've
adventure
we've
is.
had a
The
blast.
adventure is getting out there and experiencing new country. When I do my trips, they're kind of a layered trip. Um, I try, of course, where the birds at. That's the most important thing. Um, I never pay for campgrounds. I always stay in more of dispersed camping because I don't really care for campgrounds. I like to just be out as far away from other people as possible. But then I also add in the history element. So this last trip I did a Wyoming trip. I did a little jackrabbit hunting and trout, but I sort of followed the Oregon Trail out to the North Platte River. Hitting all the museums and all the stops. And to me, adding that level of that layer of history and geography and geology. I take my bird guide along. So, because you can hunt a few hours in the morning and then you're going to hunt a few hours in the night and in the evening, and you have all this downtime. And, I try to do it driving around, looking, scouting, of course, but also just looking at the birds and identifying the birds and the different wildlife that I see. Um,
Hmm.
and then I also try to add in, uh, generally one of the ways I save money on my trips is I generally don't eat out very often. I generally eat the birds that I shoot and the food that I bring with me. But I am a sucker for, there's a website called Road Food, and it was this couple, Jan and Michael Stern. They were driving around the country in the 70s and 80s and 90s. They put out several books, and they have a website that's updated on the stuff that's open and not open. But they were looking for the very unique regional things, like maybe like I'm
Hmm.
going to North Dakota in September, and one thing that they were looking for is there's a soup that's like potato and dumpling. I believe it's pronounced canopy. I'm not exactly sure, but that's supposed to be a local regional delicacy and the best place to get it is Dickinson, North Dakota at the Country Rose Cafe. So I always try to add those places in, um, just as another layer of excitement and interest. Yeah, and then the history, of course, the history.
Yeah, very cool. Well, yeah, you tee us up really nicely there for this. The most recent thing is this camping outfit
Yes.
set up on your truck. So I know that's something that you've been working on. So tell me and the listeners all about that.
So I started out back in 2011 in hotels. Like I mentioned this story earlier with the wolf house. And then I said, okay, I want to be out here. And then I went to it. I had some backpacking gear, so I used my backpacking gear and wasn't very comfortable. Wasn't really, again, there has to be a level. What I've realized is if I could reach a level of comfort, I can stay out longer and hunt harder.
Hmm.
Um, so then I graduated to a bigger tent and a cot, and there was a lot of take up and put down time, and I never cared for that. I had an old 2005 Tacoma that had a soft topper, and I built a platform on the back, which kind of introduced me to the concept of being very mobile. Like I could just close the tailgate and drive off to another spot. But that was like sleeping in a coffin. So then I just pulled that out and I dropped a twin size mattress between the wheel wells, and that was pretty good. I could sit up, but I couldn't stand up if it was cold or if the weather was bad. It was not ideal. So I say in 2020, 2021, I was looking at buying like some sort of small camper for the back. And I saw numbers 8, 10, 15, $20,000. And I built a couple of boats with a plywood technique with fiberglass and all. So I had some woodworking background. So I thought, I can build this. I modeled it off kind of like this go fast camper where it sits, it's not in the bed, it's bolted to the rails. And the top pops up like this so you can stand up. It's high enough right here so I can sit up on the bunk and then pop the top up. So I built it all in with the electrical system, and I put a propane heater in it, and I've got 7 gallons of running water, and I've got a propane stove. 1,500 bucks,
Wow.
and it's now going on its fifth year. It needs a little spruce up. It actually needs a paint job and a little spruce up, but it allows me to just close the tailgate. I have a chopped down twin size regular thick mattress on a bunk, and I can swing over, make my coffee in the morning, make dinner, pop the top up, stand up, put my pants on, jump out. Um, and it allows me to be incredibly mobile. And I
Hmm.
don't really need a campground. I don't need to plug in. Everything charges off my DC battery on my truck as I'm driving. Um, so yeah, it just allows me to be incredibly mobile. And Jake gets the entire back seat. His kennel goes into the back seat, and I lock the guns in the back seat as well. So everything's very secure. It locks up. And it's really been a game changer for me as far as being comfortable and mobile. Cause like I said, I don't want to set up shop in a place for 2 weeks. I want to move and see new country and travel lightly and, sort of, the locals don't mind you being around for a day or two. And then I think just like in the old West, when the stranger comes to town, they probably want you to move on in a day or two. That's my mind.
Yeah.
At least that's my mindset. I could be wrong, but
Hmm.
I think that's what they want. They want you to get gas, maybe spend some money in the local stores and then shoot a few birds and then head out somewhere else. So that's sort of my take.
There's a ton of benefit in being mobile like that, I think. And it all depends on what you want your experience to be. If you're going as a big group of people out to South Dakota and you've got this lodge that you're staying at, there's something to be said for being planted in that area and the camaraderie and the just the social aspect of all that.
Yes, yes,
But for a lot of us, and I'd say that I teeter somewhere in between all this, where early season prairie grouse kind of stuff, I try to get out in it as much as possible. Where I'm tent camping, I'm trying to immerse. I want to be close by. I don't want to have to be able to. I don't want to have to run to the town a lot. I try to plan really well so that I can just kind of be there and, dedicate as much time as possible to actually being in the field and, and just immersing myself in it. That's part of the experience for me too. And
And
then,
I think that,
those trips that I take with my wife where we'll go up to the North Woods. We'll do something more polished, like an Airbnb or something like that,
yes, yes,
and so,
sure, sure, sure.
but yeah, there a ton of value in just having that mobility, being able just to pack up and go. And because one of the things that I think about, is that when you're not seeing much and, the hunting's slow, if you're mobile and you just kind of have that
Yeah,
nomadic mindset, it's like, well,
let's
I'll
go.
drive an hour and a half, in this
Yeah.
direction and, we'll see what that offers. And it's just there's a ton of value just in that mobility that I think can't
And
be can't
I
be
love
understated.
to,
All right, and we are back again. We've had another round of technical difficulties, but Rob, you're a trooper man. We're hanging in here. The last thing that we left off on is that you were sitting and watching a Montana sunset and a covey of sharptails flew over. So I'm going to kick it over to you from there.
and that's why I love to be mobile in my truck camper and do the dispersed camping. Um, because I want to camp where I'm going to be hunting. I don't want to run a commute. I don't want to go to the gas station in the morning and see the people. I want to be out there amongst the wild things and the wild places. So yeah, they dropped over. That was at sunset. The next morning, I said, oh, and I thought, okay, well, there's my next morning's hunt. I got up. We found the sharptails, maybe a quarter mile away, like they were not far from where they landed, and ended up getting a popcorn flush. Got a delayed double. And then a little bit later that morning, we shot my first hunt. So, just that is the beauty of, being mobile, in Montana. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I can't agree more with like the mobility thing, and I'm aspiring to get more and more efficient with all that because I'm with you. I think there's a ton of value in the mobility aspect where you're not having to run in town a bunch of times, to get ice or groceries or whatever. And if you can figure out a setup where you can comfortably stay out on the prairie or in the woods or whatever for multiple days on end, it just, a couple things. I think it immerses you in the experience that much more. And two, it saves time and it saves gas, running back and forth. And a lot of these places that we're hunting, especially out west, you may be driving 30, 45 minutes one way to get into a town, right? And
One
so
thing I
it's
just talked to my buddies about was, we were talking about gear lists because one of the buddies, the Frenchman I mentioned earlier, he's never been out west, and we were running down a gear list, and I said, hey, two is one and one is none. So you kind of want to have backups, backup systems, backup gear. I remember I was reading a forum many years ago and they were talking about the guy asked his guide a question up in Alaska, what's the best parts kit to take for my rifle up in Nebraska? And the guy said, another rifle. So
yeah,
I always take two shotguns, and I always take, I have all the shells that I need for each different. I always take steel with me just in case I hunt a national wildlife refuge or come across something like that. Because you don't know if it's going to be available in the town nearby. I mean, a lot of what's fascinating about the West, a lot of these towns on the maps, there is no town there. There's an old grain silo and a dozen dilapidated houses. So you can't be certain. I mean, that's one part of my layered research is, I just did this Wyoming trout trip and it was 200 miles between gas, 200
yeah,
miles.
yeah,
So my truck goes about 250. So if anything had happened, I've never carried gas, but I've considered it, like maybe taking a gallon or two. I'm not exactly sure the best way to store it because I'm basically living in the bed of my truck, so there would be a challenge in storing it. But
Hmm.
Probably not a terrible idea to think about, like just being prepared, especially on a solo trip, especially on a solo
Yeah.
trip. Because there's
Yeah.
nobody coming. There's nobody coming. You know, got to
For
save
sure.
yourself out there. So yeah.
Yep. Yep. You've got to be a little forward thinking with all that stuff. And,
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
hope it just comes back to hope for the best and plan for the worst, and to better to
Yes,
have
yes,
it, not
yes,
need it, than need it, not have it. Those kind of
yes,
phrases
yeah,
that we all know. So yeah,
100%.
and, as we're kind of like winding things down here is, any advice that you give to, or just like hacks, kind of tips that you've learned, of like how to save a little money here. And sometimes, maybe that's even just $5, $10, but over the course of 7 to 10 days, I mean, stuff like that can really add up where you can save a few $100s on something. So do you have
Yeah.
anything to offer on that?
I mean, I stay out of the gas stations typically. I eat the food that I bring. Um, I I disperse camp. I stay out of, nowadays, like in Montana, a campground's about $32 a night, and all you
Hmm.
really get, there's not even water. All you get's a fire ring and a picnic table. So I try to disperse camp, and I almost always can attain that. Um, again, uh, a lot of guys go on these trips, and that's kind of eliminated some of my hunting buddies in the past because they want it to kind of be a party. And I'm not opposed to having a few drinks, but for me, I stay out of town. I stay out of the taverns. So I don't spend money on that. I'm really there to hunt. I would never want to be hung over and go hunting the next day. I'm there to really absorb this nature and this wildness and these wild birds. That's my thing. Um, yeah. And, it just doesn't have to be, I think retreating from comfort, if you're seeking comfort, that's probably going to be expensive out there. And that you don't need a fancy truck or the latest and greatest. I mean, I have a half a shovel. My recovery gear is a half a shovel, a half size shovel, and a tire inflator. And if I get into a spot in some sand or whatever, I lower the tire, I put the tire pressure down and I dig out if I have to. And that's probably going to get you out of most jams that you get into. Maybe not all of them, but most of them. So I don't think you have to have a fancy shotgun. I hunted many years with a $10 bird belt from Cabela's that I got on clearance.
Hmm.
So yeah, you don't have to be fancy. You don't have to have the biggest truck in the world. Yeah, I hunted for many years without even having four-wheel drive. And I
Hmm.
went into some hairy places in the sandhills, that I was able to not have any issues with. So yeah, I think, just go, man. That's my motto. Just get out there.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And as you go yourself too, you'll learn, how you can do things, I think, more efficiently. And you just get to become
Yeah.
a better
Yeah.
hunter and
Yeah.
camper, if you will, as
One
you
of my
as you
things
take
I
those
do too is
trips.
I always sort of reevaluate the trip afterwards, and I look at the gear that I brought and the things that I bought, and I think to myself, there's things that you never use that you have to have. You're
Hmm.
hoping never to use that shovel, but you have to have it, right? And
Right.
there's things that, okay, did I really need this? No, I didn't need it. So, okay, it's got to go. I don't have room for it. I don't, just, reevaluating what worked well and always thinking about, okay, how can I be comfortable but not spend a lot of money? Um,
Hmm.
you know, and you don't have to stay in a fancy lodge, and you don't have to take buddies with you. I mean, I love that part. I have a good friend, Kurt with a K. Luckily for me, he's moved to Arizona right in the middle of quail country. So I'll be visiting him soon. But I always say he's a fine companion around summertime. And, you know, that's part of the fun too. But if you can't find somebody to go, just go, man.
Just
There's a
go.
lot
Yep.
of power. I don't know if that's the right word, but there's a lot of growth that comes from spending time with yourself.
Yeah.
And you got a lot of downtime. Like I always come home and I talk to my wife, and I'll come up with something in our marriage that, hey, we should think about this. And she's like, "You doing a lot of thinking out there, huh?" And you do. You do. And you have a lot of time for personal reflection.
Yep.
That sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's good
I would
stuff, man.
say just go, man. Just
Just
go.
go.
Definitely. you
Love it.
know, and have low expectations. Um,
Hmm.
I just did this trout fishing trip. My father passed away a few months ago, and he was a big fisherman. I inherited all of his fishing gear, and that was something I would have liked to have done with them that we never did, is go out west together. And, I maybe caught 20 fish in the whole trip. But man, it was worth it. I saw some beautiful country. Jake was with me. He's not much of a fishing dog. The first fish I reeled in, he tried to retrieve it off the line. And I lost it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I would say, just go, man. Just go and have low expectations and, experience the wild country that we have in this great country of ours in America.
Love it, man. Love it. Well, hey, man, this has been a ton of fun. Let's hop into a
Yes.
fun little rapid fire as we
Sure.
wrap things up, but I appreciate your time today.
Sure.
All right.
My pleasure.
First one. Best bird to hunt and why?
For me right now, after going to Kansas and New Mexico this last hunting season, it's definitely a quail, the different varieties of quail. You know, I mean, up until just a few years ago, I didn't even think I realized there were so many different kinds of quail. Um, you know, uh, you got Bob White, you've got Scaled, you've got Gambles, and they all live in different elevations. You've got Montezuma, which I tried to hunt out in New Mexico. I didn't have any luck. The closest I got was there. I went to a museum that had some Mimbres Native American pottery, and they used that as the Montezuma as a motif on the pottery. That's as
Yeah.
close as I got.
Yeah.
They're in some rugged country. And then there's mountain quail, and then there's California/valley quail. So I've hunted the bobwhite, the gambles, the scaled. Yeah, I've got those three. So there's still three more, and to me, the explosiveness of the flush. I mean, it's a thrilling bird. It's a thrilling bird to hunt. Thrilling.
Yeah. 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 If I have a home bird, they definitely feel like my home bird or
Yeah,
my comfort bird,
yeah,
is Bob White. That's the only thing that I've hunted so far. I hope to, chase, a couple more species at some point, but, just that it's just intoxicating when you're right in the middle of a covey of bobs,
yeah.
or any quail species, a covey of them and them getting up all around you. It's this very encompassing feel that you have with it it's hard for another bird
You
to achieve
you
that for you.
cannot. Yeah, you cannot prepare for it. Your
Right.
dog's on point. You know they're coming up, and when they do, it just rattles your brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very thrilling, very thrilling. And the rest of
Yeah.
the quail species are very similar. The three other ones, or the two other ones, um, that I've hunted are very similar to that.
Yeah.
The scaled, they say they're really big time runners. I did not. I was in eastern New Mexico, and I did not experience that. I thought they held pretty well. They did have a ton of rain, so the population was definitely up. So there was times when I got into a couple coveys that were at least 50 birds.
Wow.
That was pretty awesome. They
Yeah.
didn't all get up at once, which was interesting, but yeah, it was fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah. That's insane. Piece of gear that you never leave the vehicle without.
Yeah. So, a few years back, I was in Southern Illinois hunting quail, and Jake's beeper went off. We were hunting like a little gully with some water in it, and he was obviously not on point. And I thought, what the heck is he doing up there? And I got up there, and he was in a snare around
Mm.
his neck. And I had watched the videos on how to undo it, and I tried to get it undone. I had no luck, and he was dying. He was literally gasping.
Yeah.
And I had a multi-tool with me, but they have the cutter is down here at the bottom, and I was getting it in there. It was so tight. Um, I was basically killing him just getting it in there. Luckily, I got it cut off, and he's fine. He's laying here right next to me, so
Mhm.
he lived to hunt another day.
Yeah.
But I always carry a small pair of nippers they got very little short, very sharp, that you could just easily get up in there. I'm not sure. I did look up the regs after I left, and there was there was trapping allowed, but no snares were allowed. So I don't know if
Hmm.
this was a legal or a legal snare. Maybe that's why I wasn't able to get it undone, because I've watched the video. But yeah, so I always carry a pair of those lightweight, sharp, short bladed nippers.
Yeah, that's a good reminder of just, once again, you can't you can't possibly prepare for everything that your brain can imagine, but just giving yourself like the advantage in that way of just being prepared in those moments like that, because
Yeah,
it matters. It's
big
that one
time,
moment you
baby.
don't
Yeah,
have it. Yeah.
he was going down. I mean, it was the lights were going out on
Mhm.
scarily, you know.
Best gas station road trip snack.
So I try to avoid going in the gas station because I had a buddy that when I was a kid, he never had any money, but he always had $7, and this is $1990, you know. He always had $7, it seemed, he would spend at the gas station getting a pack of cigarettes, a soda, and a gum. So I
Yeah.
just always kind of avoided the gas station, eating in the it it's so crazy what they want. I was looking at a bag of donuts on the way back from Wyoming, and they wanted $5 for like 5, 10 little donuts. I'm like, whew. So I'm pretty frugal, so that's part of it. But one thing my wife and I used to always get on our road trips when we were younger was Swiss cake rolls. So
Yeah.
that would be my go-to if I had to get something, Swiss cake rolls, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's fun. Little guilty pleasure, right?
oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
I know you love to cook and be a chef with these upland birds. And so, yeah, what's a upland recipe that you really like?
So I like to do, I think I mentioned this earlier, very simple, you know, when I'm in, especially when I'm in the field. I save the more challenging recipes for back home, but I'm in the field. I like to spatchcock up the breast. Um, Flatten them, get the good connection with the pan, butter, salt. When I was in Kansas, all of the birds in the Southwest were eating prickly pear. So their faces were purple stained and their crops were full of prickly pear. And
Yep.
I follow Hank Shaw. He's my go-to guy. He's got a great website. I think it's Hunt, Gather, Cook, and
Hmm.
some great books and cookbooks. And he uh he does a prickly pear syrup, and I always thought that would be wonderful to put on the birds, you know, as they come off as to baste them with. So that's one that's in my toolkit, but I haven't used yet. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, yeah,
yeah,
you'll have to message me and tell me how it goes whenever you do. And
yes, yeah,
I've entertained that very same thing too. It's just
yeah,
fun I hope to get out to, the Southwest somewhere and be able to do that very same
yeah,
thing because it sounds just off the charts delicious, but I like that. I like, I don't feel like I get too crazy with it, but there is this idea of kind of, I don't know if elegance is the word, that seems almost a
sure,
little too extreme too, but just, we go through such a concerted effort to get these birds.
mhm,
And at the end of the
yeah,
day, we're taking their life, right? And there's
yeah,
nothing wrong with breading and frying and enjoying kind of like a classic meal
sure,
that way.
sure,
But there's a
sure,
ton of fun, beautiful things that you can do with this meat,
yes.
that is just so diverse, so yeah, I always appreciate
And
hearing people's,
I always like to try everything. And I would say anyone that, like, I've just had so many people tell me, oh, woodcock are not good, or jackrabbit's not good, or my grandfather said those are nasty and you can't
Mhm.
eat those. And I just would challenge people that that's not true. And yes, you may
Yeah.
sometimes get, say a fishy duck, but if you got a fishy duck, you skin it because that's where most of the fishy flavor is. And then you're going to make, I think earlier you mentioned a peanut pad thai recipe, a peanut butter or peanut pad thai recipe. That's what
Mhm.
you would use for that fishy duck, that's what you would use to sort of mask a little bit of that flavor. Um, but yeah, I would challenge anybody that, eat your organs. There's ways to make all this stuff very tasty, very tasty. One of my greatest moments, I made duck liver pate, and I have a picture of my daughter. She's eating it, and first she's like, "What is this?" I said, "Okay, is it good?" She's like, "Yeah, it's really good." And I said,
Yeah.
"Okay, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. The rest is just in your mind."
Yeah.
And just like these trips we're talking about, just go, man. eat it and see if you
Yeah.
like it.
Right.
Throw off these yokes of convention and just say, hey, anything can be good, you know. It's all in your mind that tells you it's not, you know.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, man,
Yeah.
I've had a ton of fun today, and I
Yes.
appreciate your time and being on the show. Always ask the guests one last question as we part ways. What keeps bringing you back to the uplands?
You know, for me, it's wild birds and wild places, having these incredible adventures, seeing the history of our country, and like we talked about earlier, participating in that very intimate, visceral game of life. We're not just watchers; we're in the game, participating with those wolves that we heard howling up there in Wisconsin. We're playing out something that is so deeply a part of who we are as a human. It goes back, you know, however long you think we've been here. We're from the very beginning. We were
Hmm.
hunters, and just being a part of that is, and the camaraderie with the guys. And then one thing too is the close connection and with the dog and working in concert with this animal. And your teammates. And like my old dog Fritz, at one point I never used it. I only used a shot collar on him that one time, like I mentioned earlier. I felt like I could get to a point where I could just, and he would go that way, or I could
Yeah.
just think it in my mind and we were working. The other night Jake was sitting on the couch with me, and I said to my youngest daughter, I said, hey, feed the dog. And he jumped off the couch and he went into the where the food was.
Yep.
He knows English. He knows
Hmm.
what that means. I don't know if he knows the words, but he knows. He is very in tune, and being a part of his world and experiencing it through his nose has been one of the great joys of my life.
Hmm. Yeah. Wild birds, wild places, and a wild bird finding
Yes,
dog, right?
yes, yes.
Love it,
All
man.
wonderful.
Well, buddy, thanks so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. And yeah, man, it means a
Yeah,
ton.
it's been
And
great. I appreciate it too. Let's get out there together. Let's meet out in the great, beautiful, wide open West together.
yeah, yeah, we'll have to scare something up together somewhere, right?
Sure, sure, sure.
Yeah.